Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Minkyu and Shiyoon. We're just gonna dive right in because we have an amazing guest with us today that we are so privileged and honored to have here. His name is Bruce Smith. Welcome, Bruce.
Yo, man. Thank you for being here. Thanks for having me, guys. This is great.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, you need no introduction, but just to go through a little bit of your filmography, some of the monumental work that you did in the animation industry. I mean, my mind first obviously goes to Proud Family. I mean, that was it's a really historic piece of work, in my opinion, very revolutionary in so many ways. And I actually have a question to you about it that's a little bit of a curveball. And this wasn't in the list of questions that we provided you because we thought maybe it could be fun. But so the opening song to Proud Family was sung by Destiny's Child.
Yes. Well, Solange with Destiny's Child is kind of how they credit it. Yes.
Okay.
Well, cool. Solange is actually the lead voice, and Destiny's Child, Beyonce being her sister, they all came. The intention was they were just going to back up. They were going to do backup, and then as they got into it, I remember the first couple of takes, and Solange was great. She was like whatever she was.
She's Solange
14
now.
or something like
yeah,
that.
She's incredible
Solange
now.
She's incredible. And I remember the first couple of takes, they're all loosening up, doing their sort of vocal athletic, sort of, what do you call it, calisthenics. And I was telling you, just the sounds were amazing. And then all of a sudden, they all jumped into a room, closed the door, practice, yada, yada. Yeah. And then they come out, man, and they dropped that song like we thought we were watching a concert. It was just like, It was crazy and amazing. And it was like, we were just like, we didn't expect it. We didn't expect them to do the theme song at all. I remember when the idea of getting someone to do the theme song, we had the first choice that was put in front of us, and you got to remember it was like 2000, year 2000. And the first choice put in front of us was Alicia Keys. She wanted to do the theme song. She had saw the pilot and stuff like that. But this is before Alicia Keys was actually straight up like hit-making Alicia Keys. I think she had maybe a couple songs. She had her first album was just out. And so we liked it. We were floored because we knew who she was. And then all of a sudden, then the hammer dropped. And by the way, Destiny's Child wants to perform this song also. And we were like, okay, let's do that. It was like, that's kind of how all that came up. It was like, and that was it. Those were the only two choices. And this was the first version of the song. I remember when Kurt Farquhar, who actually, he scored the very first season of the show, who's actually Kurt Farquhar's, Ralph Farquhar's brother. Kirk is an accomplished musician in his own right. And I remember when we first talked about the theme song, I talked about the elements that I wanted to see, and he says, yeah, that's cool, great. This song was like, and just like us as artists, we come up, we draw, create several drafts, we come up with something. This was his first draft of the song. It was just straight ahead, his first draft. And I was like, holy smoke. And he's like, yeah, I realized when I did this, because once I knew that Destiny's Child was going to be singing the song, then he just tailored it to what their sound was, and it just kind of like, this works great. And the weird thing is that when I storyboarded that whole sequence, and I remember it. I remember getting half of it in the shower, and then driving into the studio, got the other half. Just listening to the song over and over, listening to the song over and over and over, and I just saw it all in my head. And so as soon as I got to it, I just boarded all that out as quick as I could. And that was kind of take one, just listen to the song. It becomes so much easier to board when you've got a blueprint that you're working with. I mean, script, fine. But when you've got a song that you know where the cuts are and stuff like that, you know how to play the rhythm and the music and everything, and understanding it visually, it just married itself so simple. It just kind of flew out. Yeah, it just kind of flew out that simply.
That's an incredible story. And
that was fun.
I'm so glad I asked that question before I even prepared for that question, because that was the question that I did want, one of the side questions I wanted to ask. I was like, what if he never even got to be in the record? But that's incredible.
Man, what? Oh yes, I got pictures. I got to post those pictures of all of us taking. So we took our pictures together. It was great. Yeah.
So this was like in 2000, before Beyonce.
This was right at the height of, just before Beyonce left to, she was still with the group, and it was just like right at sort of like, that's why it was an easy choice. It's like, this is Destiny's Child. I mean, they're at the height of everything that they're at right now. It just did nothing but help us. And
I was a huge fan of Beyonce before she was when she was in Destiny's Child, starting from Writings on the Wall period. I was obsessed with them. So
so funny about that. I was too, and I was like, I thought they were fantastic, obviously, and you remember when Beyonce went solo and she had that all-female band?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you remember the name of that band?
No, what was there?
The name of the band was the Sugar Mama Band.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I was like, hey, and waiting for my check to get scratched still, you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Well, I can't wait to get more into Proud Family and stuff, but just going, and we'll get into that later for sure, because there's so much to talk about. But then jumping forward to Princess and the Frog, I want to mention that too, because that's when we first got to work together on the same film.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me sharing a memory on Princess and the Frog, that was actually my first film, and I was an animation apprentice. That was my
you were
official
young, and
title.
I remember that.
Yeah. and there were a lot of us younger people there. That was our first hand-drawn animated film, like Dreams Coming True. And one of the clearest memories I have of that time that was so special to me was a lot of the younger animators during lunchtime, they would pop their heads into my cube and they would go like, "Did you see Shotgun? Did you see Bruce Smith's new shot?" And I'd be like, "Oh my God, I can't wait." And
that's funny.
Every new shot you did was just like so special, so incredible. And I remember then we would go straight to Shotgun and we would just flip it through, like drawing by drawing by drawing, and see it like 50,000 times over and over again. Oh, that's so funny. And
I never knew that.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. And I think all of us were very intimidated to just like approach you and like, ask. Yeah. I mean, sometimes that just naturally happens, right? Sure. When you admire someone so much, you're just like, ah.
Wow, that's weird. I've never experienced that in my like you forget sometimes that you're the more experienced person, I guess, in the room. All that kind of flies out the window when you're actually doing this stuff, because you kind of embrace everybody as kind of one, and you want to be able to like talk and because I know we had a lot of young guys on our crew who were sort of their first thing, but I mean, you guys were there deservedly so. I mean, you guys were talented. I mean, like straight up and down. And I remember us having discussions about Minkyu specifically, because we were all sort of like, well, I want him on my crew. No, his sketches, it's like these drawings are really great. So it's like he can really adapt more to the human characters than he would on the frog characters. So it's like we need to use. So these were our own sort of internal discussions also. So you weren't alone in all that.
Well, I think I speak for so many people on that production, especially the animators, saying that you were our favorite animator on that show. And I want to get into that too. But then jumping forward, I think we always open with a question.
Like, what's your current take on the animation industry? Like your take on it
right now.
Right now, how things are, how the industry's doing.
It's we're sort of in an interesting place right now because and I think I've probably said this before. We have so many people coming into this business now, so a lot of the lines get really blurry. You know, I mean, listen, for me, I'm not like a 2D guy. I'm not a 3D guy. I just want a great film. Right. So it's really important now, because a lot of the eyes are on us, spotlights are on us and stuff like that, that, you know, the good films that are being made right now, that they really start to kind of sit in the category that they're supposed to sit in. So in other words, it's like sometimes, you know, I always feel like even from an Oscar category, it's like best animated film. It's almost like it's the also ran category. Like they don't, it's as if they don't consider those movies as best picture, you know? I think the first time animation was considered best picture was such a big deal. Right. And I think that was like maybe Beauty and the Beast, right? So, so when that happened, we actually thought that there was going to be some sort of breakthrough and respect that was sort of given to the medium. Our medium seems to be the medium that continues to evolve, you know, and from a technical standpoint, and now even from, you know, a storytelling standpoint. So, you know, where we are right now, it feels like we're getting the freedom to expand out and tell more adventurous stories, more daring stories, because now you see the industry as a whole really falling back on the idea of doing, you know, sequels 2 and 3 and 4, because everybody's just thinking about tentpole movies right now. I mean, even Disney itself, it's just a tentpole business. Yeah. You know, I mean, the Touchstone label is gone. You know, Miramax is gone. I mean, like all the sort of labels that were within the bigger label are gone, because it's as if they're not trying to make art films anymore. So for us, it's like I would hope that we don't get lazy in that sense also, and constantly rely on the idea of the sequel for for the money that it'll bring, as opposed to really trying to expand the art form and have original stories like, I lost my body,
Yeah.
And I'm glad it got its just due,
Yeah.
actually, sitting alongside of Klaus, because I remember, these are two sort of original stories, but I do like the idea that now we as an industry are really sort of looking at the craft in a way where, because I'm a member of the Academy, so I'm in these discussions when they're talking about
Wow.
determining what movie is animated, for example, too, because there's
Sure.
lots of movies that are, that are sort of like mocap
Huge
movies.
discussion now.
Huge discussions
Yeah.
about like, is
Right.
mocap actually animation? Well, like, no. Well, animation is sort of manipulated frame by frame. From an artistic standpoint, this is what determines it to be animated. So there's software now that that skips that process almost, so to speak, at times. So they're really kind of getting into the minutia of making sure that a film is actually qualifying as an animation film. One, so that's a good thing. So then also they're shining a light on other films. International films. I mean, to be honest, I've like recently got into like watching just international films, period. And it's like, and some of my favorite films are like the international films, like Les Miserables, the live action, the newer one. It's great. It's
The one
film.
made in France.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great film. It's like, original story. It's almost like I tried to describe it to a buddy of mine. He's like, man, I ain't watching that, because I'm, it's like if I'm trying to slide him, like, hey, man, check this out, man. You need to check this out. If it's not Bad Boys 3, it's like, oh, no, man, trust me. Like, this movie is like Training Day in France. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, so then when you say that, you're like, oh, you talking about the Denzel Washington Training Day? I was like, yeah, it's like that, but it's in France almost. You know what I mean? It's like, so you get to explore the culture, of how this type of story would translate if it were in a different country. Parasite is the best film I've seen this year, and it's like the same way. It's like it's as if, without dropping any kind of spoilers, it's almost like Us in a sense. The movie Us, Jordan Peele, like there's a family that comes in, another family that substituting the other family. You know what I mean? It has these elements, of that kind of like sort of mainstream toilet. But it's told from this perspective, so you get to really sort of dive into the culture that you never really have a habit of diving into. So there's authenticity there.
Yeah.
Right.
And the story you can relate to, so people are afraid of these movies most because they think that they can't relate to the material. And you realize worldwide people are the same.
There's
you know what I mean?
Very universal theme and story.
Very
Yeah.
universal stuff that we deal
Conditions
with.
going around. Yeah.
And so for us in animation, it's like we are a community, and I feel like I'm real protective of this community. So just my own like sort of animation value system, I guess. So, when I see movies like, there's a remake of Lion King, live action Lion King, I'm like, that's bullshit. It's not a live action version of Lion King. And they market it that way. Disney will market it themselves as a live action movie. I don't understand that. But it's as if they think animation is some sort of like ghetto of some sort. It's a bad word. So we have to somehow rephrase this.
It makes it less serious.
Yes,
it's live action, so it's more serious.
It's more serious.
Yeah.
It's much more serious as a film. So then you guys are busting it out. You guys are saying this is live action. It's animation. It's animation. It's animation. Amid at Cartoon Brew was saying the same thing. This is animation. Y'all bullshit.
Yeah.
So we call them on it.
Yeah.
We throw flags on the field all the time. I'm glad that we continue to throw flags on the field. So that's why I'm saying like we're real protective of it. Right. So here what happens now? Bambi, right? Yeah. And they go right back to the same strategy. And we know ain't nobody out there training no deer, you speak dialogue, and there's not some real life thumper that's good, that we're going to be training. Come on, guys, like we're not that stupid, but it's like a slap in the face of animation. Call it animation. It's fine. It's just another version. Animation comes in like lots of different permutations, and it does, and I'm okay with that. But I swear, if anybody steps to me and says the word animations, I'm slapping you twice. Do not call this.
Yeah, totally.
This is not animations. Like I've been in meetings where executives be like, that was just some amazing animations that was put, and I'm like,
That's like the sign of like this person
word.
doesn't understand. Like he never sat down and seriously studied. Yeah.
I swear, man, that word drives me nuts.
Well, that's one of the things I think we all really appreciate about you and like are encouraged about you is like you have this really great kind of vocal like social media presence, and like especially going after everything that you just mentioned, we were also curious, like, so tying into that, where in your social media presence you do often speak out about things that could be better in animation, which I think everyone really resonates with that kind of stuff. Like, do you have any wishes from now on, moving forward in animation, that you wish to see, that you wish we could kind of look at and address?
I think, one of the things what's great about like 3D animation, for example, is that from an animation standpoint, you really get nuanced, subtle performances that you can't get from a hand-drawn side, because everybody's draftsmanship ability won't allow certain things. It's just really, I mean, when animation from a hand-drawn standpoint, unless it's stylized in a certain way or whatever, the limitations of just being able to draw certain things, and it becomes a thing. But in 3D, you actually, it's the puppet, so you can actually manipulate it and do all that real subtle stuff, the real subtle acting, and get ideas across that aren't just the regular sort of like, let me pick up my toolkit and do this sort of, Milt Kahl head swaggle or whatever, right? Because that works. But I love 3D animation. So now it's like the tools allow us to tell more sophisticated stories. Like I've been saying, it's like because of what's there. So now I wish that we can now take all these tools and all these really great ideas that we have from a story standpoint, and now start to really plug in. I mentioned, certain movies for a reason, but plug in different cultures being able to tell these stories, because then you'll have you can tell a certain story, but based on who you are as a person, you always have a different outcome. You know what I mean? Because of who you are as a person. It's a character thing.
Do you feel like authenticity is like an important part of that? Like
Always.
Trying to, as an artist, yeah.
I think our films will be able to expand once people are allowed to have the opportunity to have their voice in this medium. So, Disney had a lot, and this is not even, I'm not even trying to just criticize Disney or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that, because I've had conversations with Jennifer Lee, and I know what she's instituting, and I think it's a fantastic idea. But, over the past 20 years, it's always been like maybe the 5 directors. You know what I mean? It's only been 5. So you only get those points of views, and know how long it takes to make these films. You look at anybody's IMDb resume and be like, yeah, he made a film 8 years ago, and he made a film 5 years after that, and because it takes so long to craft these films in this medium. But the problem is, if you just got the same 4 or 5 voices that are telling these stories, you don't get into those nuances that we're talking about as a character and as a person. I can spend a whole lot of time with you, you guys, and let's just say I'm telling a story in your native land, and I can spend all day with you guys, and you guys can inform me about all this stuff, but I'm still gonna miss certain things. You know what I mean? Just because I haven't lived your life, and I haven't lived your life. There's certain things that you will bring to the table that actually sort of make sense, and it'd be like, oh man, I never thought about that. Subtle performances, subtle things with character matters. So when it comes to really trying to grab that authenticity, like go to these people and like give these people the opportunity, set them up for success, and give these people the opportunity to make these movies, because you'll have a great result from that. You know what I mean? The 80s and the 90s, it was a white man's world. Let's just say it. It was a white man's world. So these are the stories, and this is the perspective that you get. So then all of a sudden it falls under this sort of like generic, I guess, I mean, you've seen a lot of films that are crafted really nicely, but they don't speak to you.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like, at least for me, your animation, just like your skill as an animator, it just stands out so much, because I think as an animator, you're just so well-rounded in everything. Like, I do so look highly up to you in terms of draftsmanship, like the technical side of animation, the design aspect, all of that. But like really, what I respect so much about your animation is that kind of like the way you are able to choose these acting choices that really give this extra dimension to the character, just by like how you select what their performance is going to be, or how you animate them. And that's so funny that you mentioned that, because it's like, I think that's something that animators can really easily overlook, that like very indescribable, subtle thing that suddenly makes a character from, oh, it's just a puppet moving from this pose to that pose, to suddenly it's like this thing that's alive. And I'm just curious, like, do you have ways of thinking about that? Like, what is your approach, and like, how do you tackle a scene like that?
It's so funny you say indescribable, because a lot of the comments that I got back when I'm working on Dr. Facilier was like, there's certain things about this character that he moves a certain way, or the way he may deliver lines. It's like, it's indescribable. How did you And I was like, well, because as an animator, you drop a lot of your stuff yourself into the characters. So there's certain things that you just have inherently. Okay, I hadn't seen, these types of expressions on a character before. Will this character allow me to adapt these expressions on them? Okay, then now I haven't seen the character gesture in this place before because everybody gesture is very different, Yeah. And then I make it a habit also of just like thinking about the dynamic of everything because I try to take advantage of what I can draw. So I try to really push that. I never try to start a shot in a place that doesn't have a certain dynamic to it. Mm-hmm. For example, Shiyoon, I'm looking at you and look at you. Like you guys can't see it. It has nothing to do. I'm not telling me he looks bad or anything. Look at you, man. What's wrong with you? No.
I do look great.
But what I'm saying, like Shiyoon is taking this information in a very dynamic pose. Like, you know what I mean? Right? Yeah. But it's natural. It's a cool pose, but it's natural for him to do that. It's like, and that you believe it. You believe that this character's taking in information based on the pose that he's giving you. And that is so important for me. It's like, even if your characters, if you got scenes with characters and stuff like that, right, and you've got two characters in a shot, most people don't care about the second character that's probably getting the information from the other character. No, dude, you are acting in this shot. You're acting in the scene, so you have to treat everybody in the shot as if they're acting. It's no just sort of stand up straight, generic pose. Right. Yeah, but animators in a lot of cases they don't think that way. Yeah. They will take the character who's actually has all the juice in the scene is actually his shot, and just kind of let that fly. And all the other characters, if they're speaking or whatever, they don't give you an authentic way of sort of being present in a shot, in a scene, and all that stuff. It's like, and you can learn it for sure, but you should also think about it inherently as an animator. You should be thinking about all the elements before and after, and how your characters are supposed to perform throughout an entire sequence, and not just sort of a scene by scene kind of breakdown thing, because we always talk about continuity, but what are we really talking about when we say continuity? Are we just talking about hookup pose, or are we talking about the whole idea of the continuity of what happens throughout this sequence? I mean, just go to Shiyoon, like your Spider-Verse character designs, all that, just off the chain, incredible. Like it's just amazing. But what you did is that you design characters that allow the animators to perform. So I always think of character designers like designing a race car, so to speak, right? Because you've got the driver in the race car, and this guy could be the greatest driver. He could be Al Unser or whatever, right?
Yeah, what an
But if he jumps into a crappy car, you know what I mean? He gonna lose the race. He's like, this car's crap, and he has pulled to the pit stop and like make his adjustments, and he's crappy, and it don't matter how great you are. But if you give a bad driver, a guy who's just mediocre, you give him a great design, he's going to be inspired to take this car to the next level. Here's another bad reference, but maybe it works. I used to watch Speed Racer growing up. Like Speed Racer was like my shit, right? Yeah. And then they had this one episode that was about this like supercar, and the supercar was like, it was the greatest car ever. And Speed Racer was like, and Pops Racer were like, that car's going to beat us. That car's going to beat us because it's just the greatest car ever. And the guy was driving it. He wasn't a great driver, but he knew he had the shit, right? He had the car. He gets in the car. He drives it. It's incredible. He drives great. Beats Speed. Speed's pissed off because he's like, we got to make the Mach 5 faster. And, because I'm a great driver and I can't beat this car unless it follows the modifications of what this car. This guy's a mediocre driver. Got him a great car and he beat Speed's ass. The point being is it was a great car. So Speed wanted that car. So it's like, for me, it's like, that's a great design. And, God, and I got to get on that design. When you get a great design, it just inspires you to know what you can actually do with the character.
Well, I feel like, because there's a lot of animators that animate really well, and they can get that nuanced performance in there. But I feel like the other side that I that attracts me to your work is like you're a designer too. You're like, you care about the composition. You care about like where you put the lines.
You designed Dr. Facilier too.
Yeah, you designed Dr. Facilier, and like I could tell like when, I don't know, or it's like, oh, you didn't have to push it that far.
Oh my God, I totally know exactly what you're talking about.
Most normal people wouldn't even notice it.
There's this, and this is what it reminds me of. It's like, Shiyoon knows what I'm talking about, but in that old Disney short, Make Mine Music.
Oh yeah.
There's, Milt Kahl animated a few shots in
Yeah.
there, and the Freddie Moore kind of main girl,
Right.
you know, she's like getting ready to go out into the party, and all the shots that follow this one shot that I'm about to talk about is very, you know, it's good, it's standard, you know, she's brushing her hair, she's getting ready, it all looks good, and then Milt's shot comes in where she does this thing where it's like she's running, she leaps, and then she like slides down in front of you. Know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
And she gets the clothes.
Yeah, and it's just like you look at that shot and you're like, whoa, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Like, you know, where it's like it almost that shot. I mean, I remember studying it with you. Like, I remember bringing it to you and like just flipping through frame by frame, but just suddenly the understanding of the composition and the dimension and the grasp of the design, and then the rhythmic musicality of the movements, and all, it's just like this guy went to the future, learned all these new animation principles that everyone else didn't know about, took a time machine back and animated this one scene.
Hilarious.
And honestly, that's I had that same feeling. Well, this feeling came first when I saw your like Dr. Facilier, like the cards.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Like when that, I mean, it was just such a mind-blowing shot. And I think that film, like I remember telling to everybody like, oh shit, this film just leveled up because of this shot. Like, wow. Like, okay, he took it to the next level. And I think that's what, like, really great animators do, too, is, like, they don't just by themselves make things. I mean, yeah, like that Milt Kahl shot, or like I think definitely the Dr. Facilier shots, I think they really kind of, like, sing in the middle of those shots, but also they inspire other animators to be like, oh crap, I can't just like dilly-dally around. Like, I have to like match this. I mean,
it's like Milt to me is like the god still. Like when you see his work even now, like, 50 years later, and you guys can't hold a torch to it still. Even some of the best 3D stuff can't hold it. It holds its own against Milt stuff. I mean, Milt was just a special being, but you're right about just how his idea of design fit right within animation, like itself. Like one of the things I read somewhere, I think it was like you could go through a Milt scene and just, if you flip the scene, you just pulled out a drawing randomly. It's a freaking drawing. You know what I mean? It's a piece of work. It's like cards. If you were shuffling a deck of cards and dealing out, and I dealt all you guys a card. You pick up, and all the drawings are different, but they're all drawings.
They're all individual.
They're
cards.
all individual drawings, but then you put them together. It's like, damn, how does this work? Because when you look at it, it's like there's no distortion, and there's no, oh, that's a bad drawing, that's a bad in between. So early on, I learned that, and I was like, okay, from now on, every one of my drawings are going to be drawings. Like, they're going to be drawings, and they're going to move, and they're going to, but you're going to pull it out, and if I think this drawing is awful, it goes. I'm going to make sure I get an in-between in here, no matter what. It's going to be a drawing on its own.
And that's just something that you put it on yourself.
I just put it on myself.
Nobody pushed you to do that?
No, you see it. I mean, us, we learn stuff.
Yeah.
We look at it and we see. I mean, I remember, listen, this is not even a hit on Frank Thomas or anything, because he's incredible. But I remember flipping through some Captain Hook stuff, and there was a couple of Captain Hook drawings. I was like, kind of, not, all right.
Totally. I mean, let's be honest. I think, someone, obviously we all look up to him. He's a giant, a master. He's a giant whose shoulder we're standing on, but I think he admitted it too.
Yes.
He wasn't like the best
Well,
draftsman.
that goes to, I guess that's something that I've been personally thinking about a lot, like even now with the work that I'm doing now, because I feel like there's a lot of new animators that are becoming CG animators that they grew up with CG animated films, and they're becoming CG animation soups. And now that they're soups, they're also almost in a way designing the character, because you start working with the rigs. So again, it goes back to observation. Like, you're gonna observe real life, observe the people that just something about them is special, and it stands out to you, and it's memorable, and you want to pull from those things, right? But then I feel like there's this other important step that hand-drawn has, which is to basically get that observation, but you don't just and you see it in animation, they just sometimes they'll regurgitate the
you just layer it on top of the puppet.
But there's just something that I feel like that as a maybe
there's this like artistry,
maybe because you draw. I don't know. Not everybody has to draw, but I just feel like to me it makes sense that the person would draw, because you're trying to distill it and simplify it and get the feeling of it,
Right.
but design it in a way. And I feel like it's almost like of a generation.
Yeah.
Because
Interesting.
there's just something about like hand-drawn animation where you'd act it out, and but then you would have to distill it.
Yeah.
And even if you traced it, it would
feel like a
it wouldn't
tracing,
feel
yes,
like it.
right.
And even with mouse shapes, like
Yeah.
I was like noticing like sometimes if you just look at the reference and you just trace over it,
Yeah.
you're just gonna get some like
It's a second generation piece.
yeah.
There's got to be sincerity in it. I mean, I think that's what there's a gap there that says sincerity, originality, plussing. It's like there's all that gap between that drawing and what that rig,
the real thing.
Yeah, the real thing. And I think all those things, you got to know it. You got to know it when you see it, and you got to feel it.
Mm.
I mean, you really do got to feel it. It's like there's a lot of times where I remember looking at, where did I see this at? We were doing a Tarzan retrospective or something, and we were at D23, and Glenn Keane he couldn't show up. He was on tape, and while he's on tape, he did a drawing of Tarzan, and I've never seen nothing like this in my life. I mean, Glenn is an incredible draftsman, but I was just like, what the hell? What planet is this dude from? When he actually started his drawing of Tarzan from the hand. Like ultimately it was Tarzan, like I think maybe crawling on something or whatever. But dude started from the finger and worked his drawing, and it was nothing on the page but just white page, and he drew all the way. But he started here. I can't do that. Like, who starts there? You know what I mean? It's like if I'm working on a shot, I'm roughing in the pose, but I'm starting, in the core of where everything is. Maybe even the face, where really just the head. And even when I just construct this drawing now, I'm starting from the head and then work shoulders, blah blah blah, yada yada, hand pose. Now I'm a posing, and but I've never started from like a hand to create a pose. That's why I'm saying like Glenn was feeling it. Like he was feeling it. He wasn't doing anything but just trying to feel this drawing and feel where it is versus. So he actually he can see whatever it is on the page, and he can see it already.
Because I feel like a lot of people, it's just there's so much stuff on social media.
Right.
They've just like, I'm just projecting here, and because I do the same thing too. I struggle with it. It's like I was like, they just memorize these shapes.
Yeah.
It's almost like Photoshop. It's like
right.
Like, oh, you just pick
like
and
the
pull,
surface shapes,
and then and then you just collage it together,
Right.
and then it's like, oh, that's a U shape, or that's an M shape, or that's like how you would do a P shape.
Right.
But then it's like, well, I feel like you didn't earn. Like there's something that you have to earn it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you have to like observe it, like what you're talking about.
Exactly what
Feel
you're
it.
talking about. I mean, like when you observe Shiyoon, I mean, I feel like that's the one thing that like every animator will say like, oh yeah, you got to observe from real life, but it just really there's a difference.
Sure it is.
I think like I see your performance and your animated characters, it really is a difference between when you see like when someone really observes, and then it's again like you said, Shiyoon, it's not just about like dressing that exact pose onto that character. There is all this like filtering that you have to do in order to it's all because animation is an impressionistic art. It's not realism, so you have to take that real thing, and then the skill of the animator is then to like pass it through that like impressionistic filter system and then create an impression.
Well, see, that's why I'm saying that's where it becomes personal to you. So the character has to still personal to you, has to breathe through you. That's where you get your specifics from. It's like your filter is different from my filter, but it'll have its own authentic feel to it, and my character will have his own authentic feel to it. But that's important in getting that individualism. But the other thing too, and I note this in social media also, is like, okay, here we are, Shiyoon, you got to film. It's like, and now you get to design your characters in the film or whatever, right? But where does this really weird kind of generic white guy come from? It's as if Roger from 101 Dalmatians birthed all of these different.
It's his lineage.
It's his lineage.
His
like
DNA
it's just passed through, and it's like how in 2020. We have a Roger that continues to permeate all these films when it comes to designing your lead
main
character in a film, and they pull from that, and then it's the watered down weird version of that character,
copy of a
Xerox copy of a Xerox copy, and then how come you, as the leadership on your film, don't recognize that and call it for what it is. It's like, you're not fooling me. Like, no, you can put some pointed ears on him. That's still Roger from 101 Dalmatians. I think y'all know what I'm talking about. So, you know what I mean? It's like, that's him. That's a version of him, and that's the same kid that's in Spies, you know, and it's the same kid that's in whatever movie. It's like, where does this generic idea of a design kind of like, and then the directors are saying, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's him.
Approve,
that's our guy.
pass it through,
Approve,
put it through
pass
the
it through.
pipeline. Yeah. Like,
And I know it's not as simple as that,
right,
because we deal with a level of executives who are now shooting down designs that were probably better ideas and probably more original. And then they land at that and they're like, oh, as an executive, that's great.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
God.
Totally. I mean, we never know what really can.
We don't know the
everything's
mechanics of it
specific,
all, but I feel like if you scream loud enough, as a, you know, you will get that type of like, hey man, it's like that character has been seen everywhere. You know, each film that we've done, no matter what studio, doesn't matter. Like we are out of the hundreds of designers that are there, and you got to be able to pull from the power that you have and scream to keep, you know, your authentic voice in the mix.
Yeah, I remember another tweet that you tweeted that I really felt like, man, that's so spot on. In the similar vein was like all the parents.
Yes.
Look the same. Man, and it's funny because it's like still now they like that hasn't been addressed, even though you have a megaphone and we're like, not all mom and dads look exactly like this. Yeah.
Like you guys, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right.
It is funny because like I see that connection between, you know, authenticity and also just your level of observational skills, and then like that not connecting with those characters where it is they're not necessarily really interested in like what's a new type of character that we can observe from real life, where the integrity of that character we can like present in a new way in our film. It really is just like, oh yeah, that looks like a mom and dad that I've seen before, put it right in.
Completely the generic form of it. So you're not in touch with these characters because they just feel sort of, you know, cardboard cutout versions of characters. I mean, you know, we all lived in areas where none of the parents looked the same.
Yeah.
You know, and it is not that they are living with any less integrity or doesn't make them less interesting or anything like that also. But I think all that is part of the vision of the leadership. It's like you decide who you're going to tell your stories with, and you fight for who those characters are, and they don't come in one shape and size. I mean, like, you know, you got to be able to represent for people who are actually going to go see this movie also. You know, it is a shame, man, when you take your, you know, I got kids, so it's like taking them to movies where it's like you see them dial out because they just can't, there's not a character on screen that they can relate to. And I'm the technical guy. I'm watching it for its technical achievement. I'm watching, you know, I may have dumped out a story a long time ago, but I'm thinking that it's like, you know, fantastic. Visually, it's fantastic. Let me try to usurp everything else I can from this and walk away, and you try to get as much satisfaction as you can. The biggest statement that we can make moving forward as an animation ensemble, you know, because I root for every film, period. I'll have my gripes or whatever, and I'll cheer, you know, but I'll cheer all these things because you have to.
I feel too. Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because the moment that one film fails, I mean, we've all seen the headlines. Like, animation is awful now.
There's a ripple effect. That's the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is like, even though I might be like critiquing something, I still am kind of rooting for it. Like, I don't want it to fail. Like, all my friends worked. Like, that's the thing. But it's like, how do we balance that? Yeah.
When these things go out anyway into the public's consumption, we can't control that. And when someone's film fails, I feel bad for the director because I may know him. I feel bad for the artist because I may know these guys. You know what I mean? It's like, and I know that at the core of it, we've had great conversations about filmmaking, and these are competent filmmakers. This is not their fault. And I know it's always a mix of executive decisions that executives run away from, circumstances, climate. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like certain things you can't control, what happens in the world at a certain time, and all of a sudden here your film comes out, and it's like, oh shit, this movie would have been,
totally.
Right? It would have been great if that big blue thing didn't come out of the water and just ruin everybody's, you know, mood. You know?
Totally.
That alien that we had to kill, and now my movie's about a big blue alien, and
because they take so long,
right?
Yeah. And another question that I wanted to ask you too, in kind of relation to that, is like, how did you learn how to animate? Like, what has that? Cause I don't think I know that about you.
Oh yeah, so I was raised out here in Los Angeles. My teacher, I was 9, and my 4th grade teacher found an art school in Hollywood. It still exists, called Barnsdall Park.
Oh yeah,
and yeah,
right there. It's
right there on Hollywood
like,
Sunset
next
or
to
Hollywood
Los
in
Feliz,
Vermont
yeah.
or something like that.
I took ceramics classes there.
Oh, that's
too long
funny.
ago. Yeah.
That is so they have art classes that are reasonably priced and stuff like that. And I took it during the summer, so I went there this summer, and they had an animation class. It was like beginning animation. It was taught by this woman, Bookie Silverman. There was these commercials on TV for this soda called Shasta, and you can probably find them on YouTube or whatever, right? It's a catchy song. Yeah, Shasta, and all the animation was sort of done in like that 30s style, that sort of like what's the video game that's out there, Cuphead?
Oh yeah.
So it's all done
rubber
in that
hose
rubber
kind of,
hosey kind of style. And that was just appealing, and it was all kind of pencil sketchy and stuff like that from what I remember. And I remember the teacher, the woman who was teaching the class, she directed these commercials, so she knew a thing or two about animation. And we're there, and I remember we were talking about animation. I used to be a kid who just draw on flip pads and stuff like that at the house, just simple stuff. Like my mom kept a pad on the hallway, and it was there for take notes. Hey, I'm gone. When I'm out, my mom had to work, and so make sure if somebody called, take a number or whatever, right? But she came home one day, and the pad was drawn up with just me animating a character, for a lack of it was horrible, but it was just me fascinated with movement and how movement works. So each page was all drawn up with some face smiling at you and growing and shrinking, or some hand waving hello, and then I'm flipping it, and I'm like,
animation.
it's like flip book
Cool,
animation,
cool.
and it pissed my mom off because she was like,
all these people.
So when the idea came up to send me to art school, she was like, yes, because he's drawing up everything, right?
That's cool.
It's just a matter of time before he starts painting the walls, graffiti in the wall.
Wow.
So I went to the school, and I remember they were teaching us in reverse. So what they did was they gave us a little light board with the peg holes on the bottom, and the light board kind of adjusted different sizes. It had little wooden pegs on it that you could adjust different sizes on it. And we were animating on cell and using paper as backgrounds. So, for example, if you were animating a plane, in the air, then you could draw the background of a mountain or whatever, or the sky, and then you just draw the plane flying across the screen or whatever, right? These are the basic things they were teaching us, how to bounce a ball, and it's weird. And I still didn't quite understand it and then what they would do, we would spend the whole day understanding what the concept of animation. We're drawing with Sharpie markers, and all. But back then, Sharpies were really toxic. You know what I mean? Like you take the top off, you'd be like, "Whoo!" Oh my gosh! But there was this one kid in the class, dude, and I do not know who this kid was, but he, mastered the idea of animation. He did this really cool film where it was just a character who threw a shoe and hit somebody, but he made the shoe kind of twirl and come into camera, and I was like, oh wow, like that's really cool. It was all slow, and it was like a lot of drawings and everything. I was like, but it was well done. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And I just remember he used to come in, he didn't say much. He was probably maybe 3 years older than me, I think. But I was obsessed with what this guy was doing and how he was drawing, how great his drawings were at the time. Well, I thought, because I couldn't draw so well, but I just knew animation, how to move it and stuff. So I told the teacher one day, I was like, Miss Silverman, can I just take the light board home, because it was during the summer, and I could just draw at home. So I said, yes, take the light board, take some cells, take some markers and stuff like that, right? So fantastic. So I just remember riding home in the bus, and I had the thing with me and all the markers and stuff. And I'd go in the room and I'd just start drawing, and the door would be closed, and my mom would be like, well, where's Bruce at? Oh, he's back there in that room somewhere. Like, that boy been in that room all day. And I just was all just drawing. I was just hooked on this idea of making this film. We're going to make this film. So great. And I remember she said, that one day, boy, I opened the door on that boy, and the fumes just came out.
Oh, my God.
I looked at him, he had half lit it. One eye was open, the other eye was closed, and it was just drawings up. Fingers was all red and blue and black,
That's awesome.
But that's when I really sort of got the bug for the first time. And ended up making a film that I actually still have at home. It was very bad. I finished it when I was like, I was like maybe 9. I finished it when I was like 11 years old or something like that. And it was I just got hooked. I mean, I just got hooked to seeing drawings sort of go back and forth, and it was really fun to see. And I don't know how fun it is right now to see. I have to get that film transferred to whatever.
Oh, totally.
Medium.
You have to share
it's like,
it now.
It's like Super 8.
Yes,
like,
please. Yeah.
I mean,
it'll be so
I make it a point to do that. And so at that point when I did that,
how did it feel when you Like
when I shot it and was looking at it for the first time, I was kind of freaked out. It was kind of cool. it was really cool. It was a charge. It was a real charge, and it was like right away. I was in my mind. One of the things that never changed about me. Right away, I'm looking at it, I'm like, that could have been better. That could have been better.
Wow,
you know what I mean?
cool. Man.
You know, I could make this better.
That's the mark of a true artist.
It's
for
like
sure.
it's right away. That never goes away. By the way, it never goes away. I can still look at movies that I'm making. I'm like, damn, I can. Did we still have a scene? Can I have this shot back? I just want to just tweak a few things.
Yeah. Oh my god.
It's gone already? Oh shit, okay.
That's yeah, it's on the screen now.
Yeah, it's on the screen now.
It's out in like 50,000
Yeah,
theaters.
it's like you never lose that feeling of like wanting to sort of make something better. Yeah. So yeah, that was the first time, and then weirdly enough, that's when you kind of know this was what your calling was supposed to be.
You locked into
it. Because like I got things as a kid where, like they used to make like these little Super 8 projectors or something like that, right? And man, that was one of the best Christmas presents ever, where I could just go in my room, project these films, right? But it was a weird projector that actually it plays movies in reverse and backwards, and it goes frame by frame. So I had Warner Brothers like movies and like Bugs Bunny shorts and
that's awesome.
Oh wow, that's perfect.
Flintstone. They were all black and white. Flintstone. So it was Hanna-Barbera. It was Warner Brothers. It was Tom and Jerry's. Tom and Jerry's were the best because the animation was so great. I mean, like even I knew that this animation is great, and you could play it forward, reverse, stop it, manipulate, and that's where I really sort of like, wow, look at how this stuff moves frame by frame by frame by frame. I remember watching a Daffy Duck short, and even as they processed the films for you, they even pulled frames so things would just move faster because it was just sort of a Super 8 thing. So it's almost like watching in streams with breakdowns as opposed to all the drawings, but it was still the films, and it was all black and white, and you could just you understood how it all sort of worked, and you're literally like going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, watching how movement is sort of crafted and stuff. And so then even when we got to CalArts, I ended up going to CalArts. And Fisher Price, the little kid, they made these little Fisher Price projectors, where you actually can, same thing. You put a film that's on a cartridge inside a little Fisher Price thing, and we would watch those things. Me and my roommates, we bought those things, went to Toys R Us, bought these things, and just watched them and manipulate the same way, back and forth, stop frame, one click frame by frame, understanding how all this stuff works, man. And at that point, they had Disney films. They had clips from like Pinocchio, Peter Pan, and all these things. So it was like
basically had like the richest animation. That's incredible.
And my first year at CalArts was the year that the Illusion of Life came out.
Oh wow!
So it's like you're just getting like this is like 80, 81. Wow. It was 81, yes. And I remember that because they brought the books to the bookstore, and we heard that they were coming because it's like it's great. It was the Illusion of Life. They had that preview. It was the complete. I mean that it's like that changed the scope of all the students because we kind of didn't. We had a lot of stuff at school at CalArts. We were. Our teachers were great, and we had some of the stuff. Like I had never heard of a Milt Kahl or Frank Thomas or that didn't exist in my lexicon. So
any of these people,
so it was like, but when that book came out and you like look through this book, it's like. It's like the Matrix suddenly, you know what I mean? It's like all these numbers start wrinkling down, and you're like, oh shit, look at all of this.
It's everything that you just talked about in terms of like really how to bring life to your character.
It mattered. And then all of a sudden you start to see all these artists and how certain things are done in its infancy stage, and how, all these styles and none of the artists really drew the same. And then right away you go right to the animation section and you're like, oh, look at these drawings and how they sort of relate. I could never draw as sophisticated as this, and I'm not thinking this way, and yada yada, right? But after a while, you kind of soak it in, but it was like the first year it came out, and I remember that because I remember how I got my first book. So it was the old Kansas City Shuffle, where it was like me and my roommates, we were like, man, these books, but they came out, they were like $100. I'm a student. I didn't have that kind of money. So like, what do we do? God, my roommate Carlos he was okay. He actually got the book. So what he did is that he bought him a book at the front desk, right? And so I gave him the nod, and then he goes to him and he said, oh, I also want some of those 2B pencils over there. And what is that up there? Are those new pencils? So the woman goes to get the pencils. And I go, take me a book and walk out. Oh my God. So my first Illusion of Life book was stolen. Okay. I still have it to this day.
That's so
and it's
funny, yeah.
And it's great too because
You borrowed it. One day you'll
I still
return
borrowed it. I'll tell you. I'll bring it back one day.
So great. Well, you obviously made great use.
I made
out
use
of it.
of it.
Yeah, you like. I think it
And
pretty
I
much.
paid CalArts back tenfold because
Yeah.
my daughter had to go to that school. So
Well, there you
yeah,
go.
see,
And with
so I'm still paying for it.
Oh
so,
yeah, totally.
so-
Oh, I mean I think we all.
You know
feel
what I mean?
that way
Yes,
towards
come
about
on.
CalArts is like with the tuition
Come
that we
on,
paid.
man.
We
Yes.
should be able to like live there
Yes.
anytime we want.
Right, exactly. Right. Lifetime pass at CalArts.
That's incredible.
I was well. Even the bigger thrill was like the book that I walked out with was an autograph book, so it had like the
my
film
gosh.
strips, the
Wow.
Frank and Ollie film strips and stuff like that
Wow,
in it.
yeah.
So it was gold. I didn't
yeah,
even know
don't-
that until
don't
I
ever
left.
return that. Yeah.
No, I didn't even know until I left. I was like, oh shit, this is the real deal right here. Yeah, it was like wow. Yeah.
That's so
So
incredible.
yeah, that was
Did you
my
have
first
Bill
book.
Moore? Did you?
I did have Bill Moore.
You did have Bill Moore.
Oh my gosh! Wow,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh,
You guys
awesome.
know Bill Moore
Yeah.
stories? You guys have Bill Moore stories?
Well, I'm like a geek, so.
Oh, man.
Shiyoon is like an encyclopedia.
No, Bill Moore was incredible, man. I mean, like what's so funny about him? Like visually, he looked like a character out of like, the title sequence of Bewitched. It's animated. It's like Hanna-Barbara
Yeah,
style
yeah.
animated,
Yeah.
and then here she is, and then she flies through the
And she has the
thing,
broom
like,
and
and
the
then you remember,
sparkles. Yeah.
then it goes into her being in the kitchen, and then she kind of drops in the lap of Darren Stevens, her husband. Like that caricature of Darren Stevens, just the way he stood and everything was Bill Moore. Like it just was straight up Bill Moore. Bill Moore had his hair slicked back. He used to smoke in class with a cigarette and had the tie. He dressed like Mad Men. Like he dressed like he could literally be a character from Mad Men.
Oh wow.
And because that's the world that he came from,
Yeah,
sort of the
yeah.
advertising world from like the 50s and stuff.
Yeah.
So and
Was he a big influence on you?
Oh,
Like,
huge. You don't even. But the thing is that you hate his class. Like I hated his class. I hated his class because I could never get anything right in the class. I literally could not get anything right. And
I have a
but
friend.
he's-
I have a friend of mine, Justin. His great uncle went to Chouinard in
Oh, wow.
1942.
oh snap!
He has his first year sketchbook, and his first year, and inside the first year sketchbook was a pamphlet of Chouinard and like the
Oh,
classes
man.
and
Oh, my gosh.
and who taught. And
Yeah.
Bill Moore was actually still teaching in the 40s, and so it's that the sketchbook has his first year of Bill Moore class, which
Yeah.
is might be different because he was younger. Like this is
Wow.
like when and Chouinard when he was like a younger guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And the amount of information like written in that sketchbook is pretty incredible.
Oh,
so
man.
I was just like wondering, like
It was
just
a
I never
science,
met him.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah, Bill Moore's technique was like a science. But I mean, it was related. Here's what he told us, and it's true. He says, "Listen, you can take this class, and you're probably not going to understand anything, when you're taking it." He said, "But all the stuff I'm going to teach you guys, this is stuff it's gonna click after you leave. Like after you leave school is when
that's
it
the
clicks."
greatest.
And I was like, like really? And sure enough, like all these elements really start to kick in from a design standpoint, like from a staging standpoint, when you're staging shots and stuff like that. And he used to do these weird assignments where it had you work with in theory, how to stage the eye and how to guide the eye into the places that you needed to go. And it was just with lines that you cut out and paste and all this stuff, lines, black lines, and you had 3 shapes that you had to work with, and everything else was lines. And it's up to you, vertical lines, like vertical and horizontal, nothing tricky. It's vertical and horizontal. How can you take these vertical and horizontal lines to guide your eye to like the places that you want, someone to look at at a specific time? Like it, but for me, I'm like, dude, I don't even know what you're talking about right now. Like, you know what I mean? What are you saying? And I remember he took one of my assignments one time. It was butt ugly. I'm sure it was. He took it and it was on the wall because we always have to display stuff all the time, and it was always on the walls. And so he took my assignment, came by one day and took it and then flipped it upside down and hung it back. And he's like, "Yeah, that's better."
Wow.
Which is further proof
Classic
that I
art
didn't
school
know
story.
what I was doing. You know what I mean? I literally went through like that whole year. Just you, as long as I did the assignments, I would pass the class. But sometimes you just feel so defeated, and you're like, I just want to do animation. Like, I believe him. I'll learn it later. I just don't want to learn it now. But man, you the stuff that you remember taken away from that, like a lot about composition, staging, large, medium, small elements, how to stage that in space and stuff like that. All composite, man. stuff that you kind of keep with you like afterwards.
Did you have Tee-hee?
I did have Tee-hee.
Oh, you did have
yeah,
Tee-hee.
yeah.
Oh,
Tee-hee was funny.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, Tee-hee was great because he'd do weird exercises like drawing with both hands at the same time and drawing under the table.
I think I heard about that.
You know what I mean? It's like, what do you mean? It's like, I want you to take the drawing, put it, on the thing and draw under the table. Like T was crazy, man. Yeah, he did wild stuff, and
because I remember his caricatures in the Illusion of Life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I heard he was like a really great, like he taught caricature.
Yeah.
And
it was a kid.
art.
Yes.
Yeah,
oh, okay. Wow, that's what his class was.
Yeah.
It was a caricature class.
Yeah.
And he really started to taught us again shapes, how shapes work. In terms of trying to relate personality and characters and stuff like that, using shapes. Yeah, T was great. But you always sort of like wonder, like, are these guys like, this is what happens when you get older? Like, this is how you think? Like, T would do this thing where he'd be like, you know what? He's like, he'd say something like, Walt, had a great sense of design, great sense of storytelling. He always told me, the drawings and the thing, and Tee-hee's like, was the caricaturist around the studio, so because all of his drawings were in the Illusion of Life thing, and I was the caricaturist, sort of night of the caricatures around the studio. And eventually, when I got older, I learned how to poop and not make it stink. Like, for real? It's like, I come at T like, T man, we were like saying, yeah, you can really take a dump and it doesn't stink. And he's like, yes, I can. I'm like, wow, he's serious about that. Like, wow. So I'm like, is that a part of old age, or it's just? It's like, is that like, that's how the conversation segue? So what is the note underneath the note?
Yeah. Yeah. What's behind?
Right.
Well, obviously, needless to say, everything that you just mentioned, like composition, directing the eye, you've really clearly like mastered it. Now you've taken all those things and really put it into your work, and knowing where you came from, that's so clarifying, where you did pick up these like really valuable skills, and then cut to now. I'm actually really excited to talk about Hair Love, which is you're an Oscar nominee. Congratulations.
Oh, man, thanks, man. Thank you. Wow.
That's so exciting.
Pretty crazy.
And
completely unexpected.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Hair Love. What I loved about Hair Love too, I mean, the story is so cute and ends up being so touching. But everything that you mentioned, I mean, again, just going back to those really specific acting choices that I don't think just a generic mind would have ever come up with. Like, I can even see them, like the dad going like this, and like I don't think I've ever seen that in animation. Like, literally, it's such a gift, I think, for fellow animators when you see a film like that and you can still recognize acting choices that you've never seen before that just add this fresh, like extra dimension to the character. And that's one of the things that's so exciting to me about that film, on top of what the message is, and like kind of how cool that whole message was about like the hair and
and it was very sweet. I mean, it was a story about a father and daughter, kind of like for me it connected to me because like Shiyoon does usually the hair from my daughter, and then I just stay away from
Yes,
hair.
but one day you're gonna have to face your fears.
It's those tiny little like rubber bands.
Oh my gosh!
And
man.
I'm like, Shiyoon, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, it was a fun sort of when I first saw the story. I mean, like Matthew Cherry is sort of like kind of the architect behind the story and everything like that.
How it came to be.
So he was the same thing where he was like, he observed a lot of, he's not a father himself, but he observed a lot of his friends, his dads, who were sort of like, having this dilemma of like doing their kids' hair. It was so funny. He showed a video. Well, we show this video when we go out and play it. Basically, it's about this dad. This was even before the film. About this dad doing his daughter's hair. And she's combing it, and she's telling him, you're not doing it like mommy was doing it, and he's still trying, I got it. So then he takes the little rubber bands, right, and puts it on the hair. He's like, see, it works. And then you see the hair slowly start to escape the rubber bands. And then it's just like, ping. That's like, it's a lot. It's a real video.
And that was real. That wasn't a
real
cartoon.
video.
That was live action. That's
no way.
So
They didn't expect that either. He just looked at it, and he was looking like, I think it's like a problem. Yeah, it's so funny. Dads, it's tough to be so meticulous with your daughter's hair. So,
I
and
love
then-
that bit with like how he's like trying to comb the hair, but then the hair takes the comb
Yeah.
and like slaps it. That was so
Dude, it's
funny.
like,
Yeah.
it's what's fun about that is that, you know, I mean, we were really trying to create the tone of what, you know, the short can actually be. It was good that we had some fun with, because we come back around and twist it and show you how sort of the real, you know, the realness of why it was important for the dad to kind of get this right and everything like that, because of the mother, and the mother's dealing with her own, you know, condition, everything like that. So you sort of see this, how this family kind of comes together. It was important for them to know that, hey, Mom, we listen to you, we love you, and we're doing this to show you that we can support you all along the way. And for a short like that, even in one of the decisions early on was to do hand-drawn animation, because you could feel, we'd have the opportunity to feel more sincerity out of it. The thing with 3D, and I love 3D animation, but what happens is, you know, I would talk about this all the time, is like you throw up 12 films that probably been done, you know, within the past 10 years or whatever, right? You know, watch the first 6 seconds and you tell me what that movie is. Tell me what that movie is. Tell me what that movie is. You know what I mean? Or pick any moment. They all kind of blend in, and it's like, and there's almost an uncanny valley that happens with just the general look of it. So it's hard for films to kind of pop off the page and feel personal when you can't give that real true personal touch to it. I mean, hand-drawn animation gives you that opportunity to give and be as personal as you need to be.
Oh, totally. And
You know?
and with this story where like the design of the hair,
Yeah.
with the individual design of the hair was so integral to the story. It's
Yeah.
like I could so easily see how if it was done in 3D and
Yeah.
like everything was just like
was
a different thing, then it might not have had that like punctuated,
Yeah.
like strong striking design effect.
There's a design effect to it that you felt like if you were going to do it in 3D, you would have been tempted to make it as realistic as possible. You know what I mean? Because that's the thing with it's like with 3D, it's like everybody goes after photorealism, even if that wasn't the intention in the beginning. So it's hard to really have a hard eye to stylize it in ways that you feel like is necessary. And then stylizing in 3D becomes more costly, because you have to really think about a lot of stuff, you know, in terms of like, it's almost easier to do photorealism. And then now you got to work backwards from that to try to find the stylization of it. You know, working from a hand-drawn standpoint, we got to the stylization a lot quicker. You know, we were animating in Harmony, you know, plus hand-drawn. So it's like that nice combination, helping us solve issues with the hair. And so, because the hair is a real component, and then playing the hair two different ways in the short too. Yeah. It was much easier to do from a hand-drawn standpoint, because you have much more liberty artistically with the hand-drawn thing.
Yeah, I saw the tweet. It's so funny. We actually prepared these questions like a week ago, and like when I saw Hair Love, that was one of the things that I really wanted to ask you about, because I felt like that was like such a great aspect of the film. And then I saw just recently you tweeted like all these drawovers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which I thought was
that was
so
weird. I just kind of
cool.
did it. I wasn't even thinking about this or anything like that. I was
know.
like, you know what? Somebody asked me about it, and I was like, okay, you know, I got a lot of drawovers, and I realized I was actually going through a folder of stuff that had nothing to do with Hair Love until I saw my Hair Love folder, and I'm like, oh, what's in here? I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I got all these tons of these drawovers, because you know, people talk about, like you said, distilling the process and stuff like that, and.
Would you do them on the spot, like, or would you go back to your desk?
Both.
And, okay.
You know, sometimes I'd be right there on the spot, like, here, do this, the quicker ones, and then the others, I'll be like, let me think about this for a second, and then I'd go back and then come back with stuff. But it was important, you know, for the animators communicating to the animators, because here's the other side of it, too. This was a new arena for a lot of animators. You know what I mean? It's like trying to get some specifics on just black culture, black performances, like just the specific acting choices, stuff like that, the why of it all. Right. So funny you mentioned that acting choice with the dad. That literally came out of a meeting where we were struggling with the shot. So let me just back up.
Really?
For a second. I came on when they started animation.
Yeah, please tell us how you got involved. Like, we have so many questions about, like, I mean, this is for later, but like we saw like the producers list, and there's like Gabrielle
tons of folks.
Union, there's like Jordan Peele.
It's all Kickstarter stuff, and people who
Issa
saw
Rae
it
did the voice.
Yeah, they got real excited about just the general idea, and so the book came first. You know, because they generated enough money to create the book. But what happened with Matthew with his Kickstarter, he ended up getting like 400% more than what he asked for or something like that. So
obviously
now
there was a want for this thing.
There was a market
People
for this.
wanted to, that's
People
so
wanted
cool.
to see this. So, you know, it's like, okay, yeah, great. This is a very human story, you know, from a black culture. It's like these types of stories don't get told enough.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah,
every
I've never
studio
seen a
wants to
story
do
like
another
that
Boys in the
before.
Hood. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, who's the latest hip hop dude we can throw in a movie and just, you know, hip hop in the hood again. We'll do this shit. So, but this is more, you know, human and real,
So
and it's
intimate.
universal,
Yeah.
and so it just made sense to a lot of people, who, especially now in social media, with people really want to circle around and support things they feel like it's positive impact on our community. So that's how it got started, and then Matthew was sort of, we'd always talk even prior while he was raising money, the Kickstarter. I'd be like, hey, I'm a big fan of yours. Yada yada. It'd be great if we work together one day. So we just started kind of like this kind of social media kind of like get to know each other. And so then right around this time, I was working with Jamal Bradley, finishing up his short Substance, which is another sort of look in the black community, and it's his story from a true story that he was sharing with him and his brother and his niece. So, again, based in reality, and if you haven't seen the movie yet, it's incredible because Jamal does such a great job he's a great animator. Specifics, all the stuff you talk about, this dude is on it. Like, this is my man right here. So
cool.
We're finishing that, and so that's when Matthew said, hey, man, listen, we're about to go in animation. I'm not an animator. Everett Downey Jr. is here. He's an animator too, but we really want to find some strong people to surround everybody with, so we actually can sort of help bring this home. So I'm like, all right, cool, man. Let me see the reel. I saw the reel. I was like, oh, the story. Oh, it's so nice. And I was like, how can you can't say no to anything like this? You just couldn't.
Yeah.
So I jumped in, and then one of the first things I did was actually sort of, the short was long, and so we were talking about how can we get this entry point, how can we show Dad? When do we need to see Dad? When do we see the daughter? So we had an earlier cut where it's like, well, listen, let's take this from Zuri's point of view. She's the only important character right now. We'll introduce Dad when we actually have to have him. We made that big cut. We tried it. It was like, okay, great, that works, because now Dad comes in when he comes in. But he's actually doing stuff, which was important, because in the previous cut, he was just kind of asleep while Zuri is doing stuff. And I was like, well, that's not a good look. It's like he needs to be active in this. So when we made that cut, it really started to sort of solidify who the characters are and their purpose in the story. You only had so much real estate, you know what I mean? So you got to make sure every shot counts. Everything
short
that you're
films
doing,
are so hard.
Yeah.
They're everything has to be so economized.
So economized and still specific. So you mentioned that shot there. Dad comes in, and we were looking at it, and we were working with the studio, a few animators who were trying to grasp some specificity in the shot. And I'm looking at it, and it's that thing where no one knows why it's kind of not working, but it's just not communicating the idea, the thought, because there's no dialogue to support it. You can't say, hey, daughter, we've got to get ourselves together so we can leave. Nope. It's all pantomime, where animation works best, right? You got to be able to communicate the idea, without the crutch of dialogue. So we get in, and we're looking at it, and I'm there, and I'm looking at the animators, and I'm looking at the shot, and I'm like, it wasn't drawn all that well and stuff. And I was like, what this shot needs? And I'm looking over at Matthew, because he's there in the session too. And he does that. He was like, I don't know. And I was like, do that. Like literally, it's like I turned, it's like, you see what Matthew just did? You guys see what Matthew just did? Do that. And they looked, and then we did the drawing. I did the drawing for him, like, freeze, Matthew. I did the drawing, blah, 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 yada, yada. And I said, here. So that's the stuff I would do live in the session, giving drawings, drawovers right there. Do this.
I felt like that was so valuable.
Do this.
The moment, the energy somehow, it just happened to... to do that.
But who would know to do that? That's a choice where it's like, that the character's thinking. He's thinking, what do I do? How do you communicate a thought? You know what I mean? And that's where the conversation started. Well, guys, how do you communicate a thought? Wow. And it's like going around the table, like, tell me how you communicate a thought. How can you do that in this length of time? What can you do? What's a gesture you can do? Yada. Because here's the other crutch too animators don't use. Like the shot beforehand, there was nothing in the shot that would help support the idea of thought. And one of the things I do, and one of the things I learned early on, was to use hands to help communicate an idea. Now, the reason why a lot of animators don't do that, because hands are a bitch to draw. Right?
Totally.
So they use when they got a medium
Shiyoon
shot.
Has very high standards when it comes to hands. He cares about
You absolutely have to.
Yeah,
so
totally.
It's like
you
you
so
use
expressive.
that. Yes, always, and it's like, and it helps communicate a thought. Like we were taught in school that hands. This is secondary actions. Well, secondary actions are necessary to help communicate a thought. It's not just always just the head in the shot, and whatever you can do in dialogue and get away with it, because animators can get lazy. They get the juicy shots. In my history of looking at animators and having my arms folded, like that was a juicy shot, and he left the hands out. He just gestured, head nod, head nod, head nod, head nod, head nod. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, yeah, great. That scene works well now, right? Just all generic, yeah, it's approved. It's, oh well, let's get that. So it's like, but when you start using, if you look at a lot of my Facilier shots, the ones that I did, you rarely will not see the hands in them. I use the hands always as I can express them. And I make myself draw hands. I make myself get in there and find a way to have the hands to support. So now that Matthew scene is really, the hands are in the shot to kind of help support what this character might be thinking, and anything to help support, do it. So I tried to drive that home.
It's not just like exactly like you said, like a bag of tricks pose.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because we've all seen that. And we can easily imagine like, oh, he's thinking that. Right. But like the fact that it wasn't that,
right.
I mean, that's like, that
it's
was
important.
So cool.
And all that stuff really lends to the authenticity. And also, again, you always got to think of, tone and everything. It allows you to do things like that. That character, the dad, was treated, very realistic in those terms, and we have fun with him in the boxing ring and all of that stuff to help sort of set up his dilemma. It's really sort of exaggerated. So that's when I came in. I came in when we just started to kick off animation, and I just jumped in and really directed the animation itself. And so the way we sort of would the division of labor would be, me and E would jump in and handle animation, but then E would shift over to like art direction and design and stuff like that, make sure composition shots are correct, and because we didn't have any real art director or whatever on it. So we're flying through the stuff, making sure everything is composed right, and E would go into some boards of revisions that we had, and I would jump in some revision on board, so we split it that way. But for the most part, I was like the big animation voice in the room. And I started doing all the drawovers and stuff like that, which I started posting online and everything. I had tons more, but so that's kind of how that process kind of worked. And I honestly didn't think that we were going to get it done, because we were like kind of out of money, and then they were like, "We got to get this done. We got to put it on the front of Angry Birds. We got to get it by this date." And I'm like, and the animation, to be honest, wasn't quite there yet, and we were like, the performance is just not quite what we wanted it needed to be, and we need more time to really sort of like really shape this up and make it. And then suddenly, this is where
I feel like that's so important. I mean, because you can kind of get to a point in your career or in the industry where it's like
just finish it.
Finish it.
Yo, come on, yeah.
But then I felt like,
all the greatest.
I think that's
don't.
Yeah. I think people like you that there's just a feeling of like, no, just
this has to meet a standard.
We had to.
Everyone hold up.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, at
Glenn's
that point,
like that,
we were like fully invested. I was fully invested at this point. I mean, I'm like, I got another job, and I'm like spending my nights here, really making sure that this thing actually sort of pans out. So you're fully invested at that point, and then you really know it's like this is good. So at the end of the day, even if the animation was subpar, it just needed to communicate enough to be good. No one was, at least I wasn't thinking Academy Award or like, we got to get this done for the Academy Awards. I mean, I don't think that way. I mean, I've been in this business long enough to know that don't do that.
It's just unpredictable.
Right. You
totally,
don't think. Just think about doing good work.
Right.
And then everything else you can't control, it's like it's what happens, whatever happens after that. So what happened then is like we had this company, Lion Forge, come in and scratch a check at the last minute. Say, how much you guys need? Okay, bam. Scratch this huge check. And then at that point, we found Mercury Animation. Now, Mercury Animation is the studio that does Tangled, the series. Oh, these guys are amazing. Like those guys, yo.
Yeah.
It's like
the quality,
It's like as soon as that check was written, it's as if a SWAT team came flying down from the rafters.
Amazing. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, who are these guys?
It was meant to happen.
Move over. Yeah,
it was meant to happen that way.
Yeah, it was great. It was like the scene out of Ocean's 11, where all the guys came in and had the bags of money.
Yeah.
All right, get this. Come on, do this. Blah blah blah. Yada yada. Yeah. And they came in, man, and they did some really great stuff at the last minute, literally, and really sort of now brought everything into focus, saying, okay, these guys are actually bringing it, and we can actually finish this thing now. And then, compositing and all that stuff, you never know what happens in that stage. There's some things that didn't happen quite the way we wanted to, but you would never know looking at it. But that said, it's like those guys came in and really sort of made it happen. It was like, and it was a great team. And true shout out to Mercury. I mean, Mercury and 6 Point Harness, I mean, those two studios came together to make it happen. But Mercury, man, I'm talking about what's cool about finding a studio like Mercury and like a lot of these animation studios, and just the state of television animation with the software like Toon Boom, and what you can do with the 2D puppets now is amazing now. So now it really helps elevate the game in terms of television animation. I mean, what these guys do Untangled, I have to say, man, it's like they do some really great, television animation, which you normally don't hear those two words in the same sentence. Great television animation, you know what I mean? But like outside of Gendy, who does really great stuff, you don't find artists who actually can communicate really great stuff in the TV landscape. It's a tough thing to do, and you really have to understand animation and understand how to adapt it to TV. It's almost like when the guys from MGM, the Tom and Jerry guys, or even the Disney guys went to TV and created all the great TV stuff that we know is like cool. Like I love Johnny Quest. Like, you know what I mean? It's like the original Johnny Quest in the 60s was amazing. And then there was a documentary I watched on how they were putting stuff together and everything, and the artists that were brought in and let go because they didn't want to do crap. We liked the template that we set for this show. Let's follow this up and really make it really cool.
It was Alex Toth.
Alex Toth, yeah, it was his designs, I think, initially, and he's a great designer from a television standpoint. Again, a guy who draws the hell out of hands. Right. You know what I mean? It's like, so really, it's like seeing the television landscape kind of evolve in this way is exciting for me because I love TV just as much as I love feature stuff, and we will talk about it later. We'll get into it, but for me, redoing the Proud Family is like I want to add artistry to this again. You know what I mean? It's like we were doing stuff in the beginning, we just didn't have all the wherewithal, the artists and the artistry. But now I figured it out. Okay, good. So now I know exactly what to go and what to grab and the things that I can do to really sort of give the 2.0 version its deserved shot.
Yeah, so let's unpack that. There's a lot that you said that I really, really want to go over. And yeah, first of all, with the hair love animation, the animation is outstanding, and obviously, but you can still see through your Twitter posts of your drawovers, which I really recommend all the listeners to go to your
Bruce
Twitter.
Almighty, 3 E's on the back.
Bruce Almighty on Twitter, and check out those posts because you really did elevate. And I think those type of drawover posts are hugely helpful for people to see how you really plussed even as something as simple as eye direction, and suddenly it's it clicks, and then the scene works. And going back to what you said about good TV animation, I really do feel like the 2000s Proud Family has that same quality of that kind of really original, kind of fresh, kind of very specific acting choices as well. And Andy was gushing about it before you came too, about how the first iteration of Proud Family just was so good in that aspects. And even from some, just from when you just see a poster, I think you can see that in the designs, because it is for TV, those designs are too good, in its own way. You know what I mean? You have a certain expectation of what TV animation is, and then
weirdly
those
some of the
so
more
appealing
adult animation is I was like, oh, I think appeal is a big thing that when we look at your work, it's it's so appealing.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much, because you say that because someone put a post, and it may have been Amid again at Cartoon Brew. I think it was too. He said something about somehow along the way, crude animation and adult animation, crude style and adult animation kind of married itself.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's adult animation looks like
it's
this.
supposed to look like this. It's supposed to look like a seventh grader drew it or something like that. And it's no. And I think he actually assessed it correctly. It's it's a lot of inexperienced producers who don't and could care less about kind of what it looks like. It's really more about what it communicates, and the fact that it's crude is part of its appeal somehow, which is not true. I don't really invest in that idea. I mean, so the whole idea of doing the show would be, I come from school loving stuff like the Flintstones and the Jetsons and everything like that. And those are really fun movies to watch, fun TV shows to watch. And the material was fun. The characters were great. They can be married together, and you can have all that stuff that actually makes sense in terms of just the general aesthetic for showcasing a TV show. It doesn't have to be lazy on the visual end.
Absolutely
to make
not,
the writing shine. So
that's certainly, I feel like, an executive kind of perspective of like, for example, they'll look at something like Simpsons and they just see like, oh, I could draw that. Like that's not, they're not seeing like the subtle design choices that actually make it stand out and appealing. So they're like, yeah, just slap anyone on it. And like the designs don't matter. That's what they're thinking, when actually it's like, no, they just don't see how like it's this like beneath the surface thing that matters tremendously.
I'm good for styles, but like certain things are just, to me, it's just kind of inexcusable. Like it just doesn't have to be all Beavis and Butthead. You know what I mean? And so that's not even fun for me as an artist. It's like, hey, we want to make you executive producer, director of Beavis and Butthead. No, you know what I mean? Like that's not my style. So doesn't mean the show wouldn't be good or anything like that, but I just think that I just don't apply that aesthetic, I guess, when I'm trying to do stuff.
Can I ask you what you're working on now, what projects you're involved in, what kind of projects that you want to be involved in, stuff like that?
Well, so now, we're sort of, I think by the time this is done, this is out, we'll
try to make sure.
It. Yeah. Yes. So now we're rebooting The Proud Family.
Amazing.
For Disney Plus.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. We're excited about that. And for us, it's like, you just said it, I think, Minkyu, is like the most interesting thing about this is that we did the show like 20 years ago almost now, right? I think
20
the last
years ago,
time,
2000.
Yeah, it was like 2000. So the last time it aired was like 2003, 2004, whatever series. And so we did 52 episodes. And then you know how it is. It's like normally, when you think, and it did well for Disney. I mean, they were really happy with the numbers and stuff. But Disney, with all their series, what they do, they just cap it. They just kind of like, okay, we're doing X amount of episodes, and then we'll cap it with a movie, and then move on to the next thing. That's kind of what Disney Channel's thing was. So people always ask, so the show's canceled? Like, no, the show was never really canceled. This is how they do with all their shows. So, but what you would think is, and it's just a testament of like where the industry is like anything, spawns duplicates and stuff, right? And in our case, no one came behind us. It's like it was just the Proud Family, and then that was kind of it. I mean, there may have been some droplets of things maybe on Cartoon Network here or there or whatever, but like nothing that really sort of like,
nothing like that, certainly.
People that came in and said, hey, black characters, black family, black this and that and the other. It was still sort of the same case of like, pick your movie and we'll drop a black character in, to kind of like be all things black people,
Right.
And
but it's totally not the same.
It's a hard thing to do and hard thing to accomplish, but also one of the reasons why you didn't, because there's just not a lot of us in this business that actually would have the power to sort of do a show like this and inform a show like this. So
and really lead a show.
And
like
lead
that,
a show. I mean, it is. It's like it's one thing having really great artists and stuff like that, but then what is the leadership value of all that? So where are those people at? Yeah. So it's just not a lot of us in this business. So naturally, when everybody started rebooting everything, some things you kind of didn't want to see or whatever, you didn't ask for, right? But then when D Plus started and Disney started announcing how they rebooting all these movies and stuff like that, and then it just started. It was like, would it be great to see the Proud Family? And then all of a sudden, it just that sort of lit a fire, and you start to see all these little things online and social media and stuff like that, and then we get a phone call, from the higher ups over at Disney. We're like, hey, and I was at Sony at the time. Oh, wow. And they were like, hey, we want to do this. So what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm over here at Sony. I don't know exactly what's happening with the movie I'm working on, but like we can talk. And so that's when all the discussions kind of started. And then when the movie at Sony kind of didn't happen, it left the window open. All right, great, let's do this. So that little thing, and I brought back, Ralph Farquhar and Calvin Brown, when the showrunner Ralph, and hilarious, exec Calvin Brown. We just decided to, okay, good. Well, this is where we would take it if we were to do it this time around. That's cool. So they liked the direction that we were pitching out. A lot of the fan art online had Penny grown up and, all this crazy stuff. It was kind of wild because seeing that stuff was kind of funny, and it sparked its own sort of like, what's going on? We hearing that the Proud Family's coming back and Penny's going to be grown and in college. And some fan art, some person just put their own sort of pitch online where it's all this artwork and and it was just like, it was strange. People thought it was coming from me, and I'm like, that's not me. I don't know. No, I'm not doing it. I'm doing it. So each time that they would throw some stuff up on Twitter or everything, they would tag me. but I couldn't comment. I'm like, I'm not saying nothing. I can't say anything.
Yeah.
So we got all the original cast back, which is amazing.
Oh, wow.
And so we just sworn people to secrecy. Just don't say nothing. Just don't say nothing. Just don't say nothing. So naturally, Tommy Davidson was the first one. I think we told him don't say nothing that on a Wednesday. And then on a Friday, he was on a red carpet that following Friday. And he kind of did his own sort of like, Proud Family coming back, but don't tell nobody announcement to some media outlet that just went ablaze after that. Wow. So what's so funny about that is like you were saying, it's like, people, it was just that thing where it's like went from 400 people to 400,000 people who were just like commenting, and all of a sudden we're trending on Twitter with no announcement, no nothing, just Tommy saying what he's saying, and TMZ calling the studio asking me, like, TMZ wasn't even around back then.
Oh yeah, no, I think that totally speaks to like how iconic of a show it was
Yeah,
back
it was
then.
so funny.
The fact that it was kind of a cultural moment, and then so like TMZ, like the fact that they're like, oh my God, it is coming back, like that's just the testament to the.
It does. I mean, today, because they know originally the show was just kind of holding a mirror onto all things in the early 2000s and stuff, and from a character standpoint, and the things we were on the Disney Channel, and we were sort of a 6 to 11 show, a tween show, but our stories elevated beyond that, and that was what I think the key to the success was, that these characters actually have a bit more fiber to them,
Oh, totally.
than just a typical sort of animated kind of sitcom. And we, did what we could to stay within the Disney brand, but, it's like we could have burst from the brand, but still was acceptable and embraceable by the brand.
Right.
To most kids that are probably teens, to be honest, the Disney brand is not cool. It's like, I don't think a 14-year-old would wear a T-shirt that has Disney placed on the bottom. You know what I'm saying? It's like it just kind of takes the edge off of your personality completely. What our show's done is kind of made it cool to kind of like, you can watch this show and watch it with your family, sort of co-viewing, and it's okay. It's funny. You'll get something fun out of it. You can laugh at it. We've got jokes that are just teetering that edge, speaks in both places, but the characters feel real, and we, and it's funny and it's fun. And so I think Disney sees that, and they sees that as a valuable commodity, because that's the one audience that I think that at the end of the day allows them a sense of being cool and relevant to teens, which is a hard thing to do,
And actually doing like kind of progressive work, like actually doing kind of meaningful work, really.
Right. Progressive is key. I mean, for us, we don't want to do the same show either. I mean, so while we age up the characters a smidgen, we age up the material to have a world and introduce new characters to a world that looks like us, and that's important. The characters that you normally don't see in animation are going to appear on this show. So we're proud of where we are from just a standpoint of like people identifying with characters. Like we just don't have one character, we have many characters of color that sort of really paint the spectrum. It's a true reflection of real life of characters. Like no one person comes in one package.
Yeah.
And it's important to know that no one's monolithic in these terms, and that's where you can really have fun with the characters, because you can have 3 gay characters on the show, and they don't all, they all are different in their own way, but they can still be exactly who they are, and that's the world that we're painting as we move forward on this show.
I read this book. It's about the human genome, and it goes through. This guy is like a professor and he's studying where people come from. And I thought like it's so interesting, because the guy who studies DNA and who's trying to figure out like basically like what our history is, by looking at our DNA and like our bones, and just how connected everybody is.
Yeah.
Sometimes some people are trying to use science to make something that isn't very true, and the science actually says that there's more things in common than what's out there. And so I think that's
awesome. Actually the strength of like the movie medium is like, it might show stories that feel exotic or like so far removed from us, but when you actually see it, I mean, even I think that's part of the reason why Parasite is resonating so much too, is like to a lot of people that setting is so exotic, but then the stories are so universal and so viscerally relatable. Totally.
I love stuff like that. That's the beauty of like what I said, foreign films, because you realize like we're in an exotic place, but I know this dude, I know this girl. that. That's what I'm saying. It's like I kind of get fed up with the idea of doing sequels. Is it as if we ran out of ideas or something like that, or is it just easier from an executive standpoint to keep your job? When you can just sort of like continue to kind of pound us down with like, whatever the fifth version of this movie is. And for us in animation, it's like we haven't even scratched the surface. Like, really, I mean, I guess we can do sequels, and I get that. I mean, the theory of writing a check, and then cashing a check, I get that, because that keeps your studio healthy. Write 2 checks and cash 1. You know what I mean? Like, how about that? Yeah. They have, because there's so many studios now that are actually making movies, which is great. Now's the time, man. It's like, to roll the dice on certain things and spend less. Right. Make a smaller movie. Yeah. You don't have to make, these big budget tentpoles. Yeah. $200 million is just way too much anyway. I swear, man, you give me $200 million, I could probably make 5 movies. It's like, now you got 5 shots at this. You know what I mean? Back in the day, I remember Disney used to have the town hall meetings or whatever, right? I remember they were showing us, I'm going to tell you the year because it's important. It was like maybe 1998, 99, somewhere up in there. We were in the middle of making Emperor's New Groove. I remember that. And then they had like maybe 4 or 5 projects on the board of things to come. This is 1999. So in 1999, there was a version. It was called the Ice Princess. So there was a version of Frozen. Okay. There was the Frog Princess. So there was a version of Princess and the Frog. There was Prince and the Pauper. And then there was a version of Rapunzel. And I think Dinosaurs was on the board at that time because they were in the middle of making it. And then stuff that was being currently, I think whatever Sweat and Bullets was at the time. I was looking at there was 4 stories that were all kind of sort of fairy tale like, it was like, fairy tales. And we just got a whole thing of musicals and stuff like that. And so here comes the Q&A portion of the night. And it's Peter and Tom, Peter Schneider, Tom Schumacher, and Era. And so, any questions? Yeah. So I, stand up amongst all of our 300 employees or whatever, right? And it's like, yeah, so I see that, it's great. It's, I guess studio's healthy. We got all these great films coming up. It's really great. Well, I'm sure we're all looking forward to working on these things. I just noticed that, it's like a lot of them really sort of speak kind of the fairy tale musical lane. So, had you guys ever like thought about maybe spending less money, making some smaller films, boutique movies you can try, and that way you can sort of try more material, different material that kind of speaks maybe more in an adult lane. I mean, that was
or just try different stuff.
Yeah. It was like, but that's what I said. It was like that could speak more in, mature adult area, less of a gamble, but allow us to sort of like expand, whatever this animation is not a genre, but you know what I mean? Expand idea of telling, greater stories would have greater impact in animation. And that was met with, well, Bruce, if you're asking us if we're interested in producing porn, I was like, wow. What? It really is that black and white to them. Wow. And I was like, the word adult, I guess, kicked in, on the side. I was like, okay, so there's no gray area. It's just like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just black and white. It's like we're either in the kids business or we're making porn. Like, which one is it? It's like, my goodness. And I was like, yes, exactly what I was asking. Thank you very much, 300 employees. Yeah, that's me. So I was that dude who asked that question.
That's crazy.
I was like, man, seriously? That's how it's viewed. It's like, that's, it's like.
That's crazy, but so revealing towards like what that attitude really, like how fixed their attitude was.
Oh my gosh, man. So that's why I get happy when I see a movie like, I Lost My Body, because it's like a sophisticated story. You know what I mean? It's like, it's fun to watch. There's a lot of even live action movies that could easily adapt themselves to animation, 100%. That could just be a fun exploration. You've got Disney now looking at our catalog and exploiting it, and from a live action standpoint, we can actually just reverse that. You know what I mean? Totally. And probably make those movies even that much more interesting. Right. If you put the right people in front of it, they would find the most creative way to kind of like reinvent the love bug. Freshen it up, be something totally different, totally wild, something that could relate to today and be completely separate without. So now it's like your IP without risking any new ideas. Like, but put it in front of the right people. Let them really examine it and really dissect it and make it something fun and crazy and entertaining.
Right? Seriously. Why is it always animation that has to be changed into live action?
Oh, completely.
Why? Like, what's wrong with animation?
And
like, why can't you just leave it there?
They're not superhero films. It's just like completely pure innocent comedy. It can start in that place, and then we can always do something fun with it. But
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
you know,
I think Spider-Verse is kind of like a
completely.
great example of that, where it's like a superhero film, which is usually live action.
Yes.
Then turned into animation.
Turned into animation
was
and
so
it's
successful.
better than the-
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like it's better than
People are
the
saying
Spider-Man
it's like
films.
one of the best superhero
It's-
films made.
yes.
So it's
Well,
like
the problem is, so hopefully Sony doesn't do the same. Like that's the trick. It's like, oh, that worked.
Yeah.
oh, like now just keep doing that one thing. Sure.
right,
yeah.
yeah.
It's like, no, it worked because it was new. So keep
Right.
doing new things.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so weird.
Well,
Whatever.
Bruce, thank you so much for
Oh,
being
man.
here you're really one of our heroes, and so it's so meaningful for us that you came out here and answered all our questions. I think obviously like it's a really exciting whirlwind of the next few weeks for you, you know, with the campaigning and
Yeah,
like,
no doubt.
the accolades and. You know,
Just
we're
congratulate
rooting
me
for
now.
you. Yeah, congratulate. yeah, totally. I mean, even the nominations is so huge, and you know, we're rooting for Hair Love, and
Thanks, man. I
we're
appreciate it.
really excited to also see Proud Family as well. Is the old Proud Family all available on Disney Plus right now?
I think they got them all on Disney Plus right
cool,
now.
cool.
Nice.
So everyone check out the earlier Proud Family version 1 on Disney Plus.
On D Plus, yes. I mean, apparently a lot of people watching. We were told that
I'm
it's
sure,
one of their
yeah.
highest rated, you know, sort of like entries,
Yeah,
you know,
not
to date.
surprised.
So
That's
we're excited about that, and it just kind of sparks interest in what we would do next. So
And do you guys have like a date of ballpark year or something?
ballpark E, we're talking 2021.
Oh, cool.
These things
Wow,
take a while to
soon.
make,
No,
so
no,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
I'm
You
excited.
know?
Wow.
Sweet.
So yeah, we're excited about that. You'll see tons of drops and stuff like that, I'm sure,
Yes,
through the
please.
course of the year and
Yeah.
everything. And
please
we've got some
continue
fun
to share
ideas with
stuff
that.
on,
Yes, no doubt.
Everything that you
Oh
mentioned
no,
on
it'll be
Twitter.
fun,
Can't wait
man.
to
Yeah,
see.
yeah. We're gonna really, do it right this time, according to all sources.
Well,
But listen, thank you
congratulations.
guys, man. I mean, listen, I follow both of you guys. You know, I mean,
Oh,
what you
my
guys
God,
do
I'm embarrassed.
is
Yeah,
amazing.
uh-oh.
So I don't make you guys blush, but like, one of the reasons why I did drop Andy, I was like, Andy, what's up, man? I mean, like, this is where everybody's tuning into. These
Oh,
two
no,
dudes,
not at all.
these
Not
two
at
dudes,
all.
man.
But like, no, right when you,
I'm telling you right now,
very
there's the guys on my staff right now. If they knew I was talking to you, they would be like, "Oh, dude, really? You talking to Shiyu? Man,
Oh, yeah.
man,
Shiyun's amazing.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
no, the work. I mean, like, listen, man, it's like what you did with Spider-Verse, man. It's like I'm telling you, those designs,
Game
what you
changer.
did, it
Yeah.
totally is,
Game
man.
changer.
I mean, like,
inspired everybody.
and
really
I couldn't
elevated
think.
it.
I honestly, I started looking at stuff, and I'm like, honestly, I'm looking at it. And I couldn't think of anybody who would actually do a better version of it.
Oh.
I mean, Minkyu give you a run for your money.
No, that's good. Not at all. He's my favorite.
He's being shy, y'all. Trust me.
It's true.
He's being shy, but no, I'm telling you, man. Like
Oh, thanks.
there
Oh,
was
that
there was
means a
lots of
lot.
authenticity. I mean, I think you really handle those designs. I mean, I look at the shape language and all of that stuff. I mean, I'm looking at keep my book open. Even as I'm designing characters, I'm proud. I'm ripping off your stuff in a lot of ways. Just ripping
Well,
off
the thing
the
is,
design
I mean,
cues and stuff.
I mean, when I was at Disney, I was just so inspired by your work, like specifically, and it just, that's the thing with artwork and drawings. It kind of stays
It communicates.
with you.
It does. I
It
mean,
stays
it's
with
like
you, and
that's the cool thing. It's like it's all universal, and I think when your specific taste will pick up things that enhances what you do best. Like me as an artist is like, I can never do this, but this dude does it, and I'm like, okay, good. I can learn it from Minkyu. You know what I mean? I can learn it from Shiyoon. It's like these are things I look at all the time. I honestly look at how you draw eyes on characters and stuff like that because that
Oh my God.
communicates
I don't know.
you know what I mean? It's like how specific that is.
yeah.
Being able to get an expression and really make sure the eyes are communicating and stuff like that, man. You are
Oh,
fantastic
thank
at
you.
that stuff.
Well, you're one of our biggest heroes. Thank you so much for
I
being
appreciate
here. And good luck to everything.
Thanks.
The future is awesome. So
Thanks.
thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Thanks.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Yes,
Bye, everybody.
indeed. All right.
Yay.
This is probably the best sit down podcast I've ever done.